Close your eyes, it's 1928. Radios hum softly in living rooms, the first loaves of sliced bread appear on kitchen tables, and a cheerful little mouse named Mickey begins to whistle his tune. Let's drift into the gentle wonders of the year. Welcome, dear listener. I'm Toro, and tonight, I invite you to close your eyes and step gently into another time. Let us drift back almost a century, to the year 1928, a year filled with soft rhythms of daily life, moments of discovery, and glimpses of the future. The world of 1928 was a place of contrasts, with modern wonders steadily weaving themselves into the fabric of ordinary lives. Radios were becoming companions in living rooms, connecting families to voices and music across invisible distances. Jazz was in full swing, lively yet smooth, while silent films began to give way to voices on the silver screen. In bustling cities and quiet villages alike, life carried its own calm pulse, as people went about their days with hopes for tomorrow. As we explore this year together, we'll look gently at its events, at the rhythms of daily routines, the spark of inventions, and the joys of culture. We'll pause to notice the headlines of the day, the people who arrived and departed, and the quiet mood that lingered as the year came to a close. So settle in, breathe deeply, and let the soft flow of history guide you into rest. World events. In 1928, the world found itself in a moment of cautious optimism. The Great War was a decade behind, and though political tensions lingered, much of the world leaned toward peace and progress. One of the most hopeful signs of this came in August, with the signing of the Kellogg-Briand Pact in Paris. Nearly every major nation joined in this agreement, pledging to renounce war as a tool of national policy. Newspapers described it as a pact for peace, and though history would test its strength, in that moment it carried a tender hope, a global wish whispered softly into the late summer air. Elsewhere, political shifts were shaping nations. In Britain, the general election brought a Labour government back to power under Ramsay MacDonald. Across the Atlantic, the United States prepared for its own presidential election year, with Herbert Hoover soon to rise as a symbol of quiet confidence in prosperity. In Asia, change was equally present. China continued to unify under the nationalist government led by Chiang Kai-shek, marking progress toward central authority after years of regional divisions. Meanwhile, Japan carried on with its growing influence in East Asia, its cities alive with both tradition and modern innovation. Natural events, too, left their mark. In the Netherlands, a great flood swept across the countryside in December, forcing thousands to seek refuge and reminding all of the enduring power of nature. In other parts of the world, quieter but significant milestones unfolded. The Olympic flame burned again, as the 1928 Summer Olympics were held in Amsterdam, welcoming athletes and visitors in a spirit of unity. For the first time, women competed in track and field events, a step that signaled gentle but real progress. In the air, progress soared higher. The German airship Graf Zeppelin completed its first long-distance flight, crossing the Atlantic with majestic calm. Passengers described the quiet hum of engines, the sweeping view of ocean and clouds below, and the sensation of drifting through the sky like a dream. In that same year, in the town of Rjukan, Norway, something very special opened, Krossebanen, the first cable car in Northern Europe, built in 1928 by Norsk Hydro. It climbs from the valley up toward Glepseborg, rising nearly 500 meters, so that during the long winter months, when the valley floor sits in shadow, people could ride up the mountain and feel the sun. Rjukan was already known for its waterfalls, its steep cliffs, and its early tourism, and it would later become famous for the heavy water plant at Vimork, which was at the center of daring Allied operations in World War II. These raids and sabotage missions were aimed at halting German production of heavy water because the Allies feared Germany could use it to develop an atomic bomb. For me, this carries a special warmth and pride. I was born in Rjukan, and my roots are in that valley, in the glow of the mountain and the sun, where Krossebanen first lifted people toward light. Meanwhile, in America, Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic as a passenger, a milestone that carried with it both symbolism and inspiration. The skies of 1928 held not only planes and airships but also dreams of what flight could bring to humanity. Thus, the world events of this year felt like brushstrokes on a canvas of optimism. Treaties of peace, elections of hope, and voyages through the skies painted a picture of a world still healing, yet reaching forward, step by gentle step. Daily life around the world. Beyond politics and headlines, 1928 was filled with the rhythms of ordinary lives. In cities, electric lights had become common companions of the night, their soft glow replacing gas lamps and candles. Families gathered around radios, twisting dials to catch distant voices and orchestras, marveling at how sound could travel unseen. A trip to the grocer in 1928 might reveal fresh bread for a few cents, butter for around 50 cents a pound, and a dozen eggs for less than 40. In the United States, a new automobile cost roughly $600. Though for many, horse-drawn wagons still carried goods and people in quieter towns. In European villages, bicycles clicked softly along cobbled streets, while in rural areas, life continued at the steady rhythm of farm and field. Fashion carried its own stories. For women, dresses hung with straight, loose lines, often adorned with beads or embroidery, echoing the style of the flapper era but with a slightly softer tone as the decade matured. Men often wore felt hats, polished shoes, and three-piece suits, even in ordinary settings, while children's clothes remained practical, pinafores, knickerbockers, and sturdy shoes for play. Entertainment filled many evenings. Families went to the cinema, where the magic of moving pictures still drew gasps and laughter. Though most films remained silent, the arrival of talkies was beginning to spread, filling theaters with sound that seemed to dance right off the screen. Elsewhere, neighbors gathered to play card games, to sing by the piano, or to share a quiet meal. Children in 1928 found joy in simple things: marbles rolling across wooden floors, tin toys clattering on tables, jump ropes hitting the pavement, and games of tag beneath the summer sun. Board games like Monopoly were not yet widespread, but classics such as checkers and chess were treasured in many homes. Travel, for most, meant short journeys. Trains carried passengers across countryside and coastlines, the rhythmic clatter of wheels becoming a lullaby for long trips. In cities, trams and buses offered daily transport, while the wealthier few explored the skies with new airplane services, though these were still considered a luxury adventure. Meals reflected both tradition and novelty. In America, sliced bread had just begun to appear in 1928, quickly becoming a sensation, the greatest forward step in baking, as advertisements proudly declared. Meanwhile, iceboxes still held blocks of ice to keep food fresh, though electric refrigerators were beginning to appear in households that could afford them. In every corner of the world, daily life carried its own quiet beauty. Farmers rose with the sun, office clerks filled ledgers with careful handwriting, seamstresses worked by lamplight, and children drifted to sleep with lullabies sung softly in their native tongues. It was a year of steady progress, yet at its heart, life was lived in simple, familiar rhythms. Science, inventions, and technology. 1928 brought sparks of discovery that would echo through the century. In a modest laboratory in London, Alexander Fleming made an observation that would change medicine forever. Noticing that a mold called Penicillium notatum had destroyed bacteria on a petri dish, he had discovered the beginnings of what would become penicillin, the world's first true antibiotic. At the time, it was but a curious finding, yet history would remember it as the dawn of a new age in healing. Elsewhere, engineering and invention moved steadily forward. Television, though still experimental, flickered to life in demonstrations across Britain and the United States. Small screens glowed faintly, showing grainy images that hinted at a future where moving pictures might one day be broadcast into homes. Automobiles grew faster and more reliable. Companies refined engines and designs, making travel more accessible, while airships and airplanes pushed the boundaries of what was possible in the skies. The Graf Zeppelin's success encouraged dreams of global air travel, and new passenger routes began linking cities across Europe and America. Household technology also spread. Electric refrigerators, vacuum cleaners, and washing machines promised ease, though only a fraction of families could yet afford them. For many, kerosene lamps still lit kitchens, and clothes were scrubbed by hand, yet the horizon shimmered with the promise of convenience. Science, too, looked outward. Astronomers refined their telescopes, studying the stars and planets with growing precision. Meanwhile, physicists continued to puzzle over the mysteries of atoms, laying groundwork for theories that would unfold in the decades ahead. Inventions of 1928 often seemed small at the time, yet together they painted a portrait of curiosity and progress, gentle steps that would soon transform daily life in ways few could yet imagine. Culture and the arts. Culture in 1928 shimmered with variety, from the glitter of Broadway lights to the soft sound of jazz in smoky clubs. In literature, Virginia Woolf published Orlando, a novel that danced through centuries with playful imagination. Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill premiered the Threepenny Opera in Berlin, filling the stage with sharp satire and memorable songs. Across the Atlantic, children delighted in the first appearance of Steamboat Willie, where a cheerful mouse named Mickey whistled his way into history. Music swung with energy. Louis Armstrong's trumpet soared through recordings, while Duke Ellington filled the Cotton Club in Harlem with melodies that blended sophistication and soul. Dance halls echoed with the Charleston, the foxtrot, and softer ballroom steps. Cinema was in transition. Silent films still held audiences, but talkies, films with synchronized sound, spread rapidly after the success of The Jazz Singer in 1927. By 1928, Warner Brothers and other studios raced to add sound to productions, forever changing the way stories were told. Audiences marveled as actors' voices and laughter came alive on the screen. Sports brought excitement. The 1928 Summer Olympics in Amsterdam introduced the now familiar Olympic flame. Athletes ran, swam, and leaped before international crowds. For the first time, women competed in athletics events, a moment of progress that would grow in the years ahead. In the United States, baseball thrived, with Babe Ruth continuing to capture imaginations as he sent baseballs sailing into distant stands. Art carried both tradition and experiment. In Paris, surrealists such as Salvador Dali were beginning to gain attention with dreamlike imagery, while Pablo Picasso continued to explore new forms. Museums and galleries welcomed visitors seeking inspiration, while in homes, people hung reproductions of landscapes, portraits, and still lifes, images of calm beauty for daily enjoyment. Thus, the arts of 1928 reflected both joy and transformation, voices and images leaping forward into new mediums, while melodies and stories carried hearts into the quiet hours of the night. Media and headlines. In 1928, newspapers remained the heartbeat of daily news. Folded on breakfast tables or sold on street corners, they carried stories of politics, sports, and curiosities. Headlines spoke of the Kellogg-Briand Pact, of elections in Britain and America, and of Amelia Earhart's courageous flight. Prices were often listed in advertisements: men's shoes for under $5, a new hat for less than $3, and an evening at the cinema for just $25. In rural areas, weekly papers reported local harvests, marriages, and community events, blending the grand with the familiar. Radios added new dimensions to news. Families tuned into short bulletins, often read in measured voices, mixing world events with music programs and plays. The sound was sometimes crackling, fading in and out, but the wonder of hearing news as it happened gave listeners a sense of connection to the wider world. Magazines offered lighter fare. The Saturday Evening Post carried illustrated stories and colorful ads, while Times summarized global events for quick reading. Humorous comic strips, like Crazy Cat or Popeye, who made his first appearance in 1928, delighted readers young and old. Thus, the media of 1928 balanced seriousness with charm, keeping people informed while offering moments of escape. People born and people died. Every year welcomes new voices and bids farewell to familiar ones. In 1928, the world greeted those who would leave lasting marks in art, science, and culture. Among them was Maya Angelou, born in April, who would one day become a poet of deep wisdom and grace. The beloved actor Shirley Temple entered the world in April as well, destined to light screens with her charm during the 1930s. Stanley Kubrick, born in July, would later change the world of cinema with his vision and precision. Others included Andy Warhol, the artist who would define pop art, and Maya Plisetskaya, a ballerina who would grace the stage with elegance. Yet 1928 also marked quiet farewells. Thomas Hardy, the English novelist and poet, passed away in January, leaving behind works that captured the spirit of rural England. In March, Norbert Wiener's father Leo, an important cultural scholar, was mourned. The world also said goodbye to Émile Durkheim, the French sociologist whose work shaped understanding of society. Each birth and passing was a thread in the fabric of history, soft reminders of the flow of time. As 1928 drew to a close, the world stood at a threshold. The decade had been marked by energy and innovation, by jazz and cinema, by discoveries that promised brighter tomorrows. The Kellogg-Briand Pact seemed to suggest that nations longed for peace, even as undercurrents of uncertainty quietly stirred. Radios played into the night, carrying music and laughter across continents, while sliced bread entered kitchens as a small but delightful convenience. In theaters, Mickey Mouse whistled his tune, while jazz musicians lifted spirits with bright notes and syncopated rhythms. In living rooms, families looked ahead to 1929 with quiet hope. The stock market in New York stood tall and confident, and though the world did not yet know what was to come, the present felt steady, even promising. For ordinary people, life was measured in simple joys: a warm loaf of bread, a walk through lamplight streets, a letter from a loved one. 1928, then, can be remembered as a year of transition, of invention and imagination, of quiet optimism. A year where airplanes stretched across skies, where radios carried dreams, and where art and literature continued to shape hearts. And as the final days of December passed, bells rang out into a winter night, carrying the world gently forward, step by step, into another year. Thank you, dear listener, for joining me on this quiet journey through 1928. I hope the stories and images of this year have brought you calm and rest, a gentle reminder of how history flows softly into our present. If you enjoyed this bedtime journey, I invite you to support the channel with a like, a comment, or a subscription, simple ways to help this project continue. Each new listener becomes part of our growing circle, sharing in the lullabies of history. For now, may your night be peaceful, your dreams light, and your heart calm. Sleep well, and know that another chapter awaits, the year 1929, waiting just beyond the horizon. Until then, rest easy, and good night.